Yeah, I just clicked record to the cloud, so we're recording now.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna head out then.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
And we're about 3 minutes after. I'm going to go ahead and start us. And so this meeting is formally called to order. And is there, you had a chance to read the minutes. Well, first of all, welcome to everybody. I'm glad you were managing to get on. My apologies for getting the everything to you late today. I was functioning on the right day of the week. I was not functioning on the right year when we used to do it on the second week of it. That was years that we did that. So I was thinking, gosh, are we going to do this on Valentine's Day? So my apologies for getting that out so late to you. I really do apologize. So, okay, I assume you did, even though you got it late, get a chance to read the minutes. Is there anything that we need to change on that? Any additions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve those? From somebody?
I so move.
Thanks, John. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor, would you give me a thumbs up so that I can see? You're okay with that? Let me just scroll through a couple more people here. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, we're gonna go to the first thing. Is Maren here yet? I don't think I see her yet.
I don't see Maren, and I don't have anyone in the waiting room.
Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead since she is not here, but I see that that Mary's here, but we need Janet and Ruby, you may have to start us.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I don't see anyone else. So basically you're working on project-based learning is what you're talking.
yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Yep, and give an update of what we've been doing, where we're at and why and what it is. Yeah. So we can go ahead and start with that, Bev. That's totally good. Let me share my screen here. We don't have any high school teachers here, it looks like.
Well, that
No.
could be, Ruby, my teachers are all in my staff meeting. We're still
Oh,
finishing up.
that makes sense. Got it.
And Joe is coaching basketball, so he said he wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
And then two others said that they wouldn't be here either. So
yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So I will give you an update on project-based learning throughout the district. Can you guys see my share? Thumbs up if you
Yes.
can see it. Okay, awesome. I did it right then. Thank you for confirming that. So basically, I just thought I'd talk about what it is and why we're doing it and why we're making efforts throughout the district for professional learning for our teachers. My computer must be slow today, you guys. I don't know why. I apologize for that.
there it goes. We're on.
Yeah. So I'll cover what it is, why we're doing it, and then I'll just open it to questions for anybody on project-based learning that you might have. There are some common myths about PBL that I want to just talk about because the project-based learning term has taken on different meanings in different areas. So one of the myths is that it's a new fad in education. And well, that depends on who you ask, because a lot of people say project-based learning started with Dewey in 1897 with his experiential learning theory. Some will say it started in the 60s with McMaster Medical School. They coined the term project-based learning with their medical students. And so some will say it originated in the 60s, and that's where the elements and the promising practices came from. And others say it started with the Buck Institute of Research, which was a research institute researching project-based learning and promising practices in the area. It's now called PBL Works. Several years ago, they changed their name to PBL Works, whereas that's where a lot of the leading research comes out of. So it's not a new fad. It's been around for a really, really, really long time. And why? Because there's a lot of promising practices tied to that term, project-based learning. Another big myth is that you have to give up your standards and curriculum and skills and content in order to do project-based learning. And that's just absolutely not true. In fact, key content and skills are an essential part of project-based learning design. All of the standards and skills that you should be teaching students should fall under that driving inquiry question. And so in order for students to be able to show their learning toward that inquiry question, They have to demonstrate these standards that we teach in schools. And then another big myth is that there's no more direct instruction from the teacher, that teachers have to be all PBL all the time. And that's absolutely not true. Often that's where teachers, they try PBL and then they fail and they give up because they throw out what they're doing and try something totally different. And teachers shouldn't do this. They should never stop the direct instruction. They should always balance direct instruction with student-centered learning like we always do in our classrooms. So definitely don't give up the direct instruction when you're doing PBL. Another big myth is that PBL is the same as just making something in class or hands-on learning, and that's not the case. It's not about making something. The product that the students produce in the end is really dependent on the driving question and the student choice. Sometimes it's a letter to the governor. Sometimes it's a book of published poems from the class. So it's not just hands-on learning or making something. Another big myth is that it takes too much time. And the thing about that is the teacher has total control over how much time the project should take and can take and will take. Projects don't take 2 months and they shouldn't. It's depending on how many standards are taught. It could just be a few weeks depending on what the driving question is and how many standards are taught under that driving question. So I think I forgot one. I skipped a little ahead too fast. And then the other one is that project discipline difficult. And the myth there is that many teachers give up on PBL because they just give students a project or to make something and then they let them go. And without doing the frequent checks for understanding and without providing much direction. The gold standard teaching practices I'll talk about in a little bit, they use specific time and task management protocols and specific group protocols and reflection protocols and critique protocols for students to hold students accountable for participation and production. And so these are hard skills to teach students, and PBL teachers embrace them. And also there are GOs, so they're very important. So what it is it's purpose-based learning, and that's a term that I'd rather change it to. Trevor Muir, who's a teacher in the country, he's also a professor at a university in I think Michigan. He uses that term purpose-based learning instead of problem-based learning or project-based learning, which it's getting many terms. It's because it gives purpose to the standards that kids are learning in classrooms. That driving question of inquiry is the key to project-based learning. And that driving question of inquiry, it needs to be challenging, and students need to be able to have all of the knowledge and skills and understanding in order to investigate and answer that question in the end. So that's a big key to project-based learning. Authenticity is a big part of project-based learning. Real problems, relevant questions, and real audience for the students to give them purpose for learning, to increase engagement, motivation in the classroom. Sustained inquiry, so asking challenging questions throughout the project to sustain student inquiry is really important in PBL. And then student ownership in their interests, providing students with choice throughout their learning, either in the process or the product. Having a high level of rigor through reflection, critique, and revision. So at the end, their product is at a high quality. And then learning the content at a deeper level. There's a typo there. So learning the content at a deeper level and project-based learning is critical. It's like the cornerstone. Students generate knowledge rather than the teacher just generating the knowledge and passing it along to the student as like an empty vessel to be filled. Students are the creators here. So after they get the information, they take that information and they apply it and they use it and they create something with that new knowledge that they've gained. I talked earlier about the Buck Institute, which is now PBL Works, and they have a lot of promising practices in the design of the project that teachers do and the teaching practices. So these are the big essential design elements that go into projects. And you'll see at the center there, the key knowledge, understanding, and success skills. Those are the 3 areas that teachers focus on. So for us, and what that means for our district is, yes, we're focused on those essential state standards, and we're also focused on these global outcome skills, which we agree as a community prepare students for college, career, and life. And so that's one of the big reasons, the whys of PBL, is because you're combining that key knowledge with global outcome success skills. PBL works defines success skills as creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, perseverance. Those things are all things that sound familiar to us because they're also things that we value here in Estes Park. And so you're designing not a unit, you're designing an experience for a student in PBL because you have this driving question. Everything they're going to lead is going to get them to be able to answer and explore that question and create an authentic product for an authentic audience in the end. And then gold standard teaching practices. So the role of the teacher is really key. You can't have one without the other. You can't just have a gold standard design without pairing it with the important teaching practices. And those are the things I talked about earlier with task management for students, product management, reflection, critique, revision, students coaching students, building that culture in your classroom. So these are all essential elements that go into teaching. Teachers support those development of the success skills or our global outcomes when they're teaching gold standard design. So why? These are comments that I put on here because I've heard these from students, and I bet you've heard these from maybe your children or other students if you're a teacher. School's so boring and I can't wait to be done and start my real life. Nothing we learn in class actually matters. Student doesn't matter. School doesn't matter anyway. I already know what I want to do and I just want to get out of here as soon as I can. Unfortunately, not all of the school day is going to be deeply engaging, and that's okay. It's important for students to struggle through boredom. They learn a lot from it actually, but not all the time. And so why is we want to increase student engagement. We want to deepen content knowledge, excuse me, I can't talk. And throughout the district, we want to make learning more real and relevant to students. What matters to them, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about. What the research says about it when it's done well is it increases student engagement, it increases self-regulation for students, it increases self-motivation for students, it increases collaboration skills, positive attitudes, critical thinking, and creative thinking, and it increases sustained understanding of the content. They're not filled with content, regurgitate it and repeat it and then forget it. It's sustained understanding. So one of the examples of an area where we've built up PBL is at the high school. We're working on project-based learning design and essential components of it and getting better at it as teachers throughout the district in lots of areas. But one of the big things we've done is at the high school, we created a project-based learning pilot this summer, which continued into the school year. These teachers took on even a bigger challenge because they're doing interdisciplinary project-based learning, which is really difficult. Because what it's doing is you're taking many content areas. So they're looking for a very challenging inquiry, driving question that it incorporates skills and knowledge from across content areas. So the summer program, they focused on math, English language arts, and science for their summer project-based learning pilot. An example of what they did is their driving question was, how can we become more wildfire resilient communities? A question really relevant to us because we had just suffered from three major wildfires right next to Estes Park and all experienced that. So they could capitalize on a student's real lived experience for this one. And so then they had to take content from all of the areas of high school mathematics, science, and social studies and ELA. They actually embedded social studies in the end. They hadn't planned to, but it so naturally did. For our students, this was actually a credit recovery. So it was a way for students to get math, English, and science credit that had failed a math, science, English course at the high school. So that was their driving question. How can we become more wildfire resilient communities? Students, right off the bat, day one, they visited Rocky Mountain National Park. That's a big part of PBL is the experiential learning and making it relevant and having experiences that you can build off. So build that background knowledge. And then as you learn content, you can build off that background knowledge. They engaged with the rangers in collecting data. We hiked into wildfire burn areas in the national park. We were the first to be able to go in the burn areas. That was exciting for us. We were also the first student group that the park had been able to have in 2 years, which was also exciting for us. In science, they learned about fire suppression and fire succession. So suppression of fires, succession after a wildfire event. And they also learned about the history of wildfires. They read The Big Burn, which is a novel about the history of wildfires throughout the Mountain West, and all the different presidential campaigns and the Forest Service and their involvement and how it expanded. Evaluated the role of Smokey Bear in wildfire mitigation throughout the generations and how his appearance and role and slogans changed throughout the decades, depending on what was going on in history at the time. They took quadrat data and they made mathematical projections of the biodiversity within the next 10, 20, 30, 100 years. They also did some cool experiments with slopes where they burned toothpicks up and down slopes, and they calculated, they took data on calculating the speed of the fire spread based on the slope. They learned about social aspects as well. They learned about the mental health and well-being of firefighters and community members after a wildfire event. They interviewed wildland firefighters, fire pilots, and they interviewed our police chief here in Estes. And they also debated with the National Park Rangers on our second visit about the 3 elements that they consider when they make decisions on fighting wildfire, which is ecology, human life, and structures. And they had to pick one that they were most they had to pick one and back it with claims of why that one was the most important, which was fun for all of us. We also visited a lot of burn areas, including over at Glenhaven as well, and took our own data over there. Thanks to the help of the rangers in the national park, teaching us how to collect quadrat data. And then we also did a service learning project with the Trails crew, where we helped the crew remove invasive species after in succession areas that were burn areas. And so those are some of the pictures you're seeing there. So that's some of the experiences that they had. In the end, I'll tell you what their final project was. In the end, they presented to a panel. It included their new principal, myself, instructional coach. It included their parents who were invited, and it included the fire chief and a school board member. And they presented to this panel, and the panel evaluated them with the rubric and gave them feedback. They shared overall what they learned in class and what resonated with them the most and what learning they would take away. And then they had a creative component where they shared a project where they answered the question of how can we become more wildfire resilient communities? And they got to choose their audience, and they got to choose the product that they created. Super diverse range of projects. One group created a children's book for early childhood. It's a picture book of wildfire, and it taught them about wildfire succession after a wildfire event. And it also was it's hard for me to explain, but they did a really cool thing with black and white background to show the mental health impacts after a wildfire event on the community. So it was really neat. Another one did their peers as their audience, where they did a music video using the Smokey the Bear costume. Thank you for the Forest Service for allowing us to borrow that. And they made a rap song with lyrics about wildfire safety and how to be more resilient and take care of your homes and yourself. And so that's a example of the product, but there were 5 different groups, 5 different diverse products in the end, capitalized on creativity. And then currently in the district, we did a summer workshop that 7 teachers attended. They got to visit the pilot summer class with the high school teachers, and they got to do like a coaching cycle with those teachers and develop their own lesson and build their own project designs for their classroom. We have a few pilot groups going on at the schools. They're reading PBL starter kit books. They look like this for secondary educators and elementary educators. They're reading those together and coaching and getting into each other's classrooms, sharing their lesson plan designs. Some of them are even piloting designs together. We have that going on in the elementary and high school. We also have been doing site visits to other project-based learning schools. There's schools in Colorado that are strictly project-based learning schools, where they take all their standards and all the state standards and content, and they co-teach together, driving questions, teaching the content. And so we visited 3 so far. 2 high schools and one K-12 school. We took elementary, middle, and high school students to visit that school. That's Polaris School in Fort Collins. And then also we have individual instructional coaching going on with our instructional coaches. And so those are our current professional learning efforts in the district right now. So I'll stop sharing and I'll open it to any questions.
Thanks, Ruby. And a couple of questions. How many kids participated in that last summer?
We had 14 kids participate, 12 finished. We had a really strict participation attendance policy. They could not miss more than 3 days. If they missed 3 days, they weren't able to finish the program. The program was only 20 days long, so they needed to commit
Okay.
for all those days.
And I'm just curious how those kids this year, if some of the things that they learned there, if it has made it so they're a little more engaged in some of their lessons this year.
Yes, so I've done qualitative interviews with those students and I don't have their permission to share what they said. I actually did it for one of my qualitative research projects for one of my classes last semester, but I had 6 students participate in that. So I did some student interviews and asked them a lot of questions about their perceptions, their experiences, their motivation, what motivation meant to them, when they feel motivated in class. And overall, what we saw from our students is the 12 that finished it, 10 of them elected to take PBL again this school year. So that's a good repeat rate. And I interviewed 6 of those 10 students that took it in the summer, chose to take it again, about how it's improved their motivation, their self-directed learning, and what's going on in the classroom when they feel motivated. What are they doing? What are their peers doing? What are the teachers doing, to get a little more insight into how students are motivated. And there's a lot of students that are choosing it because it gives them purpose. Purpose was one of the major themes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know of some of the research that I've read of businesses, and exactly what this program produces is exactly the type of employees they want. They want the employees that have just those same skills that are demonstrated in PBL. And that's what we're going to need, what students are going to need. So neat. That's cool. Any other questions from people or comments?
Ruby, this is Stacy. I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to how you're currently utilizing that for credit recovery for students? And
Yeah,
then also,
absolutely.
Yeah, and then also can you add, moving forward outside of the credit recovery world, how you'd like to offer that to our students?
Yeah, you bet. So that's specific to the high school.
Yep.
So for credit recovery, these are students who in high school, you need 4 credits in 4 core areas in order to graduate. And so we do have required classes for those core areas, but then students get to elect to take like their other math credits and English credits and science credits and social studies credits. So the PBL can be one of those choices for students in order to get those credits, in order to be able to graduate. The teachers that are teaching the project-based learning classes are teaching multiple content areas. Like I said before, that's challenging to do, even a bigger challenge in your own content area. So they're taking some essential standards from those content areas and then designing a lesson with a driving question. Those students are enrolled in 2 periods a day and over lunch, which allows us to be able to take them on field trips. For when we can plan field trips, the teachers have those students from 11 o'clock all the way until the end of the day, 3:20. So we have a big chunk of time we've been able to take them to places like Devil's Backbone, and we've gone to the national park 5 times actually this year. And so those students are enrolled in 2 periods. If you know the high school schedule, this makes sense, but they earn 3 credits for that class. So for a student who maybe failed Algebra 1 and has to retake Algebra 1, it benefits that student because they can also be taking PBL and get a math credit while they're retaking Algebra 1 and get caught up on their credits for their core classes. Does that make sense, Stacy? Did I say that in a way that it makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it also benefits students who want to take more advanced classes as well, or want to take dual credit classes at Front Range or enroll in Front Range. Because what they can do is, if PBL is an option for them, if they're interested in it, and if they want to do that, they can also gain those 3 credits during those 2 periods, and it opens up their schedule to take more advanced classes. So if they wanted to take more advanced math or English or science or social studies or more elective classes, they could do that as well.
So the PBL class would allow them to get a credit at the same time, but it's not a dual credit, correct? It just allows their schedule to have a dual credit.
No, the PBL class is not a dual credit
Okay.
college
It just
class.
allows
It's
them to
just
have
the
a
offer.
dual credit in their schedule.
Yeah, it allows students to be more flexible in their scheduling. Yeah.
Thank you. And then moving forward, are we going to offer it as well, like in addition, or let the kids know, let the students know, hey, this is a great way to get credit and more hands-on based, project-based learning, if you will, instead of just having it be more thought about in a credit recovery process?
Yeah, our
I think it's
intention
a
was,
great way to learn.
yeah, our intention was actually never for it to be a credit recovery process. We piloted it that way because we had a need, and that need was largely due to the impacts of COVID. When we went remote learning for the first semester, we had a lot of students never engaged. We never saw them online. And so they quickly fell behind in credits. And so the summer pilot was intentionally designed for credit recovery for students who needed to go to summer school because they weren't engaged in virtual learning and now they fell behind. The program at school, though, Stacy, is not targeted to be for credit recovery students. It's a pathway, a PBL pathway that we offer to all students. It's open to all students, whoever wants to try it and be engaged in it. And if they think that's, a really great way for them to learn, they can enroll in it.
Great, thank you. I was just thinking about the course offering books coming up as the high school schedule develops.
Yeah, we plan to continue, but we also want to expand PBL to classrooms. We have 4 teachers that are working with our 2 project-based learning teachers. We have 2 teachers we hired specifically to implement PBL because they're experienced in it. They've taught it in the past and they're really good at it. And so they're working now with 4 interested teachers that want to give it a try in their own classrooms with their own standards. And so they're doing that now in their classrooms, and they're doing coaching cycles together with John, the instructional coach. They're getting into each other's classrooms. They're reflecting with each other. And so what we'd love to see is more co-teaching happening as we expand into the future. Mary and I have been in conversation with this, and John, our instructional coach. Co-teaching is really impactful and effective. It's almost like having a constant coach in your classroom as an instructor. You get someone else to watch you teach on a constant basis, give feedback to them, you plan together. And I'd love to have Mark and Shayna talk to you guys if you want to have more questions on PBL about their experience from the teacher end on co-teaching PBL together and what that means for them and what they've learned and how it's helped them grow together as educators by having a partner.
Ruby, just for clarification, I'm sorry, Stacy, are you through?
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks. It's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Stacy.
So just for clarification, did I hear you say that with the PBL books that you have, that it was the high school and the elementary, middle school, I assume, is involved too?
Yeah, we had a lot of middle school teachers come to the summer workshop, and they're doing they also went on the site visits with us, and they're doing a lot of individual coaching with Sonia to continue learning about PBL and trying it in their classrooms. We're not doing a specific book study with a group of middle school teachers right now. We are doing that in the elementary and the high school. But yeah, I mean, we have that available, and we'll offer that workshop again this summer for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I should mention too, what I didn't have on that slide is that, PLC teams are tackling this. The
Mhm.
electives team at the elementary is really tackling this together and working on it. So, you know, teachers have the choice of how deeply they want to dig in, you know. So there's teachers that are digging in real deep together right now. There's teachers that are trying, and there's teachers that are just learning right now. So there's all kinds of levels in the school right now,
Yeah.
depending on what they're ready, depending on what teachers are ready for.
Exactly. And different steps as far as, you know, you're going to try something in small quantities to see how it works. And if you get confident with that, you move on. So yeah, neat. This is
That's
cool.
right. One thing I want teachers to hear though is, you know, you don't have to throw out what you're doing. Take a
Mhm.
look at a group of standards you teach. And is there a driving question that can make the learning relevant and purposeful for the students? And if so, have that driving question as your theme, and all that content and standard that you're teaching along the way lead students to that in the end.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and as adults, we don't have just things in isolation. We combine things. And so when we're doing projects and whatnot, it's a combination of things that you're working on. So yeah.
I
Good.
see Julie, I think, has a hand up over there.
So having taught at a project-based school previously, have you, or has it been under consideration, especially at the high school level, to offer, instead of just generic or elective credit, to actually offer specific course level credit? So for example, like I think of, you know, a project-based learning class potentially dealing with like botany, greenhouses, things like that, where you actually could get some biology credit out of that along those lines. Or I think of when I was looking at William Smith, they had like an American Ninja Warrior course where a science and a math teacher got together and they designed that around getting some physics credit and some math credit designed around the design of that course. So those students had to have some math chops in order to be in there. But as you talk about more advanced students, you potentially could have that where you could chop off some math and some physics credit dealing with that along the lines of like a conceptual physics. You actually could probably give some algebra credit out for that depending upon the nature of that course. I compare that out there with maybe like a construction geometry, and have any of those discussions been along those lines? As I think of like a construction geometry, and then I think of American Ninja Warrior going in that direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Julie. Absolutely. We don't want to give teachers too much before they're ready for it, but absolutely that's the goal as we expand into year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And when we started this, we were really looking at a 5-year plan. And in 5 years, we'd love to have more teachers co-teaching interdisciplinary units, because that's so powerful. And we visited William Smith 2 times actually with teachers. And it's really powerful when students can see the relevancy and real application across content areas, like they did in that summer pilot where they integrated math and science. And then they were reading The Big Burn, and you know how they saw how wildfires changed throughout decades. And so that can be powerful, and we know that, but we don't want to do it before teachers are ready. So for example, the 4 teachers at the high school that are piloting it, if they have interest in blending their classes, like an earth science and a math class together, to co-teach and offer kids both of those credits, then that's definitely where we'll go when teachers are ready for it. Great question. Mary, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you covered it really well, Ruby. Thank you. You know, I'm still learning a lot about project-based learning myself, and I've gotten to see a lot of this, and got to go on a field trip recently too, where we learned about snow science, and it's some really great way. It's a really great way of learning. So thank you, because I learn a little bit more every time I hear more about it and start to experience and talk to the teachers and see exactly what they're doing too.
Mary, you went with the second PBL class on the snow science field trip. I'll tell you, we'll see if it was the same. When we got off the bus, the students, the 15 students we had said, I don't want to do this. It's too cold. I don't want to go do this. And they'd never put snowshoes on before, and there was lots of falling. And they got back on the bus and they said, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And can we come back and do that again?
Yeah, in fact, it was crazy. Every kid that we had on the second one was really had a good time and talked about what a good time in the learning. And you're right, how very few of them had ever snowshoed. It was cool.
Yeah.
When you said you went to Polaris, what is their project-based learning model based on?
So theirs is actually based on experiential learning, so the EL design.
Okay.
And they're a K-12 school.
I'm going to send you 2 links to great schools on the big picture model of learning that have been really successful, because they're more high school based that you might just want to take a look on. They aren't here in Colorado, but they're up in Washington State that have done a really good job that may give you some thoughts about how this might integrate into a high school.
That'd be awesome, Julie. Thank you.
I think one thing too, I was just thinking, people have heard experiential learning and then project-based learning, and it might be helpful to kind of explain the difference and how they're related.
That's a really good question, Bev. I haven't dug as much into experiential learning as I have project-based, but the school that we visited twice, William Smith, is an experiential learning school. It's an EL school. The models are very similar as far as earlier in that slide, I showed you the project design elements and I showed you the teaching elements, the teaching practices overlap a lot. That I do know in experiential learning. Experiential learning also has a huge piece of service learning component. That's not talked about as much in project-based learning, but that service learning component, I mentioned that the kids went out with the trails crew for one day and they went into a fire burn area that had burned like several years before, and they removed invasive species so that it could naturally succeed. The fire succession area was like getting filled with invasive species. And so they wanted it to be more natural. And it's the plants that were coming back, they wanted to be the natural plants of the park. That would be an example of service learning, like getting out in your community and doing acts of service. There's a lot to be learned, a lot of great skills to be learned from that. And experiential learning really incorporates a lot of that into their design that project-based learning doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, thank you for differentiating that. I think that's helpful for people to understand that. What's neat too, a lot of the scholarships, since I've been involved with that a lot lately, the local ones, a lot of them are looking at community service. So being able to pull in that community service part into the project-based learning would be advantageous to those students.
Community service is a requirement for our graduates at Estes Park, but they independently keep track of it on their own.
Right.
Embed that in the learning they're doing. It would be really cool.
Be relevant.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Anything else that anyone wants to ask on this? Thanks, Ruby.
You bet.
That was helpful. Okay. I think I saw Mary, you're here. And I think I saw Janet's here. Yep. Janet. Okay. I don't see Marin. So Janet, we're going to go with your UIP.
All right. Hi, Bev.
Hey.
And everybody else. All right. So quick overview on middle school. Actually, I'll share my screen here. Am I okay to share, Bev?
You're going to have to ask Ruby. She's the host right now.
I am. Let me make sure. Yes, you can.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, so I'll just take you through our UIP. I started with one thing we've been really working hard on here at the middle school over the last few years is just teacher efficacy, and really that our shared belief that through our collective actions, meaning we're all doing the same things for kids, it has a positive outcome on learning. So here's a list of some of the things that we're doing school-wide. So Bobcat High Five, we've all agreed on 5 literacy strategies. We've had those for about 3 years. This year we added the Fab 5, and those are 5 ELD strategies. We're using way more than 5, but they are 5 agreed upon that you will see in classes, all classes. Every Monday in advisory is Math Monday across the school. All kids are working on math in advisory on Mondays. We do a day called DEAR, which is drop everything and read. So we're giving kids time to read. We're also doing that through advisory. We created it or utilizing a school-wide writing rubric. All teachers are using it, but we officially have a writing assessment that we give to kids 3 times a year. So beginning, middle, and end of year. And then we use our rubric for assessing that. And we're no longer using the NWEA test that was called language usage, because we're getting a much better assessment of where kids are with their writing by having them write instead of taking a multiple choice test. So we're really happy with that. We have a school-wide math, what we call math explanation rubric. So because we're teaching math school-wide, some of the teachers were asking for this. So the math team just created a rubric that any teacher can use if they're assessing students explaining math. Leadership team, that was new it feels like quite a few years ago now, but that's helped just bring consistency to our building and a consistent message across the board in our building. So we've done it both ways. I'm looking at Ruby, right? We've had a leadership team. We didn't have a leadership team. We got one. There's pros and cons to both. It seems to be working. We're just such a small school. Sometimes it can feel like half the staff got on the leadership team, but I have a small group right now of Sonia Greenway, the instructional coach, and then 4 other teachers. So it's working really well. Trying to stay super aligned with our expectations of PLCs. That's actually where I was. We had a leadership meeting at 3:30 and just again, working on aligning on Mondays. We only talk about instruction and learning, and it can be hard. It's easy to talk about kids and get off track and talk about behaviors, but Mondays here, we're focused on instruction and learning in our PLCs. And then we miss Mary Barron terribly. I want to say that out loud, but we are still restorative here at our school. And we have the 6 R's that we're using in the classroom. And those are from the restorative practices. So I do things in buckets. So the first bucket of our UIP here has been culturally responsive teaching. I've got a whole list of things here. I just wanted to highlight a big thank you to Ruby, because thanks to Ruby's push, we went from a halftime ELD teacher. They were shared with the high school. So I had them halftime and high school had them halftime. And we have a full-time ELD teacher here in high school, has one in their building. And it's made a really big difference in the services that our kids are getting. We also, thanks to Ruby, have at each building a cultural liaison, ELD paraprofessional, and I'm super excited because I have not had one since May. Carlos Delgado, who's a graduate here, was ours last year, and he was taking like 18 credits at CSU. So I actually told him he was no longer, he just couldn't work here because he needed to be at school. But I hired a man from Columbia, and he arrived here in Estes Saturday, and he started today. So we're really excited. His name is Jaime Caicedo. So he's around. Ruby got to meet him today. His first official day is tomorrow, but he got dropped off here today and didn't have a car. So we just kept him all day, which was really fun. So we're excited. He will be, that's a dual role. It's very fluid. Cultural liaison, he'll be building relationships with families, doing home visits with me, doing translations, calling parents with me when I need to. And then the paraprofessional part, he'll be supporting our ELD students in the classroom. Also through, you've heard me talk about the homework roundup program, but I've already met with him about, he'll be providing those academic supports in the late afternoon to our ELD students. So kind of got him going already today. We're really excited. And there may be a possibility that he's going to be help out with some of the load at elementary. Ruby and I are working on a plan for that because the load at elementary is big. So I think we're going to be able to make something work that he can start supporting some kids there. And it might be kids we see really soon here at the middle school. So those are the things I just really wanted to highlight because it has made a difference in the supports that our kids are getting. So I tried to give an example of a goal on each one of these, and I just picked one. We have many, so each teacher has 4 goals. But like, I just wanted you to see some of them and how all of our goals fit within a bucket. They have to have a goal, they had to fit in one of our UIP buckets. So this is an example of one of the goals. This was an individual teacher: improve English language learners proficiency level for all students who attend ELD class. They will increase their overall language proficiency scores by 1 point on the access test, which we just got done giving. So just thought you might want to see how it all builds, right? Our goals fit in our buckets fit in the district buckets. So there you go. All right. Next, this, Ann Dewey helped me with this, Ruby. I can't take credit for this. So I hope you don't ask me a whole lot of questions, but Ann's like, this is really cool. You got to show them. So this shows 13 out of 17 of our students made growth on the access test. The further above that line, the more growth they made. So pretty cool visual. Just to see how far they have come. So across the bottom, then that would be the 1920 school year access test. And then across the top, the 2021. So.
And I would just add, Janet, that 1920 school year, we had incredible growth too. So we were already starting with incredible growth.
Thank you, Ruby. It doesn't show on this graph, but Ruby's absolutely right. So they've come so far. Super excited. All right. Math, reasoning, and explanation has been a bucket of ours for quite a few years now. It's an area that our kids have struggled. Apparent not just on CMAS and other places, but we've really for 3 solid years been working hard on this one. This is where the math rubric came from, Math Mondays. All teachers have agreed to include math, reasoning, and explanation in their core classes. The PLCs are reviewing student work together. Been really great to see that step in PLCs, that they all brought the math assessment in and everybody used that rubric to grade it together. So that's been good. Here's an example of a goal. This was actually the math team goal. No, 7th grade, sorry. 90% of 7th grade students will grow 3 points or more on this is the fancy name of the rubric, deeper thinking, writing mathematically rubric for their math, reasoning, and explanation writing assessment pre to post by the end of the school year. So again, the goals tie to the bucket. The bucket here ties to the district bucket. So that's Aaron Copeland's goal right there. Written expression. Again, another area, this was quite a few years ago on CMAS, and you probably remember me talking, but we actually had kids that wrote nothing on the extended writing, like actually wrote nothing, just went ahead and skipped that. So we've been working a lot on the mindset around writing, length of writing. Our 6th grade teacher is awesome. They've been doing this timed writing just all year. She's made it really fun, but she sets a timer and they just write. They can use her prompts. They can write on their own. And I think we're making great progress, but that's where this bucket came from. Definitely an area we needed to work on with our kids. The school-wide writing rubric has been great. The language arts team has trained everyone in using that. We've all graded together to align how we use the rubric. Teachers are doing written expression in all classes. And another goal, so this was the language arts team goal. By May 2nd, 70% of English language arts students who were identified on the map, so that would be on the fall map reading, they came in the lowest category, in the 21st percentile or lower on that assessment. What I like about this goal is we use map to identify them, but we're now using this, it's called 6-minute solution. Instead of just relying on map, like, well, we'll wait and give them the map and see how they do. We are progress monitoring kids weekly, particularly these kids that fell in this category. And really thanks to Sonia, we used to use 6-minute solution like so long ago. Ruby, remember 100 years ago, like I taught reading with Martha Tierney. Do you remember? Like we all were reading teachers, and do you remember? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and we did that's when I learned about 6-minute solution, but we've made some steps this year in progress monitoring. We don't have all the tools that elementary has. We're not masters of progress monitoring here like they are at elementary, but this has really helped in this category. But I love this goal because it's like, we're going to identify you here. You are low in reading. Here's what we're going to do every single week as we go along to help you improve. So that's all written expression. Restorative practices and social emotional learning, I lumped into one bucket because I really just wanted to have 5 buckets because it's easy to remember. These are both so big, they probably could have and should have been their own, but we put them together. So restorative practices, we're just in a really good rhythm with it here. Sonia Greenway is helping out. She's taken over where Mary left off, but I think it's so part of our culture now. And honestly, like, knock on something as I say it, but our conflicts this year have been just minimal. I think our kids are so darn glad to be in person. Sonia had like 2 weeks. She didn't meet with any kids to do anything restoratively. So, but it's here, it's in place. I think teachers are handling things in the classroom before they ever get to the office. So we're handling attendance restoratively also. Super excited. We did put together a social emotional learning class for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It's called Connections. Ruby helped us get a curriculum. We're using right now Newsella. There is work in the district to look at something K through 12, because I think, Ruby, we're the only ones using it here in a class, and it's worked out great. But if they get something new, we'll certainly jump on that. But the first quarter or two, is it 3 years ago, lot of resistance to the Connections class. Like, Miss Rishi teaches the 7th grade, and they all were like, I thought we were doing art. Like, they were kind of like, what happened to art? I have Miss Rishi, but now kids love it. And the 3 teachers I have teaching it, Mr. Seiler, Miss Copeland, and Miss Rishi, are definitely the right 3. Like, that's not a class just anybody can jump into and teach, but it's gone really well for our kids. So we already talked about the 6 R's. We continue to implement global outcomes. Obviously every day in every room. We did write a school-wide goal this year around our global outcomes. Through fall and spring student-led conferences, 100% of our kids will use the global outcome continuum to reflect on where they are. So not a rubric, but where am I on the continuum in terms of my communication, my collaboration, my creativity. So we used it this fall. So we had 100% of the kids in student-led conferences use it the fall. March 16th are spring conferences, and then kids will then again be reflecting on where they are with it. Every week there is a lesson in advisory around GOs. So that is new. Shout out to Sonia, because some of the teachers were like, what lesson? Like, whoa, my gosh, right? Sonia's put together just this, if you want to use it, this toolbox. If you want to do your own GO lesson, you can, but if you want to drop into that toolbox, you can just pull lessons out each week, and grade levels are doing that. So like 8th grade across the board is doing the same lesson each week, and like theirs is on Thursday, but it's been fun, and advisory is the perfect place for those. So, and then embedding global outcomes into our daily lessons and instruction. We did agree as a school, we've always had a learning target up every day, but we've added a global outcome up on the board every day that relates to today's lesson. So that's GOs. This is not a bucket. So you've heard the 5 buckets, but we've just gotten super focused on read plans this year. Like, it's kind of our new mission, like we needed another mission. But we, at the start of the year, have 40 kids on read plans here at the middle school. I saw Mr. Leha on here. He can probably talk better than I can even about kids getting on a read plan. Happens if they're not reading at grade level by 3rd grade. Ruby, stop me, or Terry if I'm wrong. They go on a read plan, and then there needs to be a body of evidence showing that they're reading at grade level. We have to provide 3 data points, 3 pieces of evidence that that student is reading on grade level. So I gave you just a little breakdown. In 6th grade, we have 21 students on read plans. Of those, so look at all my kids on plans, 12 of them are on ELD plans. 11 of those kids are on IEP plans, and 5 of those kids actually Our double dippers, they are on an ELD and an IEP plan and a read plan. Can you, like, it's a lot. So we're working really hard. I'll tell you our strategies here. In 7th grade, we have 14 kids. In 8th grade, we have 5 students. And I just gave you a little breakdown of just to see that those kids also are coming to us with other challenges, along with learning to read. It's not always just that simple. So things we've put in place just this year that we were not doing prior to this. Mr. Seiler, once a week for a quarter, pulls read plan kids. So 8th grade for a whole quarter, they see Mr. Seiler once a week. They do miss an elective, but they see him. It's very targeted, small groups of kids. The 6th grade is so big, we did divide them into 2 different groups. The learning place comes in 1 day a week. It's reading tutoring. It's not homework help for language arts. It is reading tutoring. Their tutor is also using the 6-minute solution. Sonia trained him on that. So they're using that same progress monitoring everywhere they are. And he's a really cool guy. He was like a reporter for a newspaper in New York or something. He's awesome. Miss Marlowe, again, because of the high numbers in 6th grade, she is dedicating 1 advisory class a week. So she takes her advisory kids and farms them out to the other teachers. And any of those 6th graders on a read plan come to her 1 day a week. So it's 25 minutes of advisory, but she was really struggling in class, like, oh, in this class, I have these 4 kids. In my next class, I have these 6. So I think that's going to end up being a really good solution there. And then just lots of support from Mrs. Greenway on the read plan. So I'll keep you posted on our progress, but certainly in my mind, the goal is no kid goes to high school on a read plan. There's some extenuating circumstances that might be difficult, but for the most part, I think we can do it with this kind of intervention. So it's not a bucket, but it's super important. So I wanted to just touch on it. And I think, professional learning communities is one of our district buckets. So I think I've already probably touched on all of this, but our PLCs are up and running. We have a leadership team. It's working really well. We love that each quarter we get together as a district leadership team. Ruby, they're so excited for March 1st already that I know, right? My leaders get together. Ruby runs it, or the principals. And it's the elementary leadership, middle and high school, and they get to collaborate and work together and talk about challenges of being a leader. And that's been really good. So through that, we did kind of tighten up what some of you would know as MTSS. We call it student success here, but we've gotten a lot clearer around that and identifying kids that need supports through what we call student success. So I think that's as quick as I can go. And that is the end of my presentation. Does anybody have questions on any of that?
I have a question.
Yes, Deb.
Okay. So with the kids with writing, I was just curious, are they having more difficulty with narrative or expository or both?
They won't put the pencil on the paper. That really was the challenge, Bev. It was kind of that mindset. We've been working a lot on a growth mindset. It was that starting, that I can start it. Really, we didn't find that it was one type of writing or the other. It was I can get started with my ideas. We've used a lot of graphic organizers to help kids. So many graphic organizers just to get their thoughts before the writing starts. But no, we found it across the board with writing.
It wasn't any particular area that they're, okay. So I was curious on that one. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that you guys have been working on culture for so long, and the school district itself. And we're seeing the benefits of that. And so congratulations to you on that. That's really neat. That's coming along so well.
Thanks,
That's really cool. And I was just curious on the geos, are you hitting all of them? Because I remember when, at least a couple of years ago, some of the teachers were basically they were targeting, just getting started, targeting with maybe 1 or 2 geos that they zeroed in on. Are they doing all of them?
We do them all. And Bev, they're so all connected.
Yeah, they are.
It's hard to just teach collaboration and talk about it without talking about communication at the same time. No, we're definitely not targeting. I let each grade level decide each week which one they are going to be talking about, and what activity they're doing, but we've opened up that whole can and we're doing all of them.
Yeah, neat,
Definitely.
neat. Yeah. And I was curious with the leadership with the multi-level on that, when you've got the leadership teams from the elementary, middle, and high school.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any patterns from what they're describing?
Gosh. I'd let Ruby chime in too, if I don't remember. I think we've spent some time on equipping them with protocols for running a meeting, right? I think teaching a classroom of students is different than leading 4 of your peers through a meeting. So us just as admin supporting them with the tools that they need to stay focused. I think that's a theme we kind of heard across the board. We did one, Bev, that Ruby put this all together, that it was all about like conflict. Like they wrote up situations before we met. And then in that big meeting with all the leaders, they had time to read, I'd say conflicts, like situations that have come up they've struggled with. And then they got to practice as a team, and they were sitting with elementary, middle, and high all mixed together. And they got to learn about, oh gosh, that's going on at elementary. That's happened to me too. And then brainstorm solutions to that. So I think one of the biggest thing is just staying focused on instruction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of
Great.
the things that we always do, Bev, is we ask the leaders we ask for their input and feedback every time we plan to get together.
Yeah.
And so their input drives what we work on as far as our leadership improvement efforts.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's neat for them to see that there's certain things that, gosh, not just us that are dealing with that. Sometimes that happens elsewhere. So neat. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks,
Bev.
Janet.
Thank you, Bev. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Janet, this is Stacy.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Oh, gosh, I thought I was done, Mrs. Free.
Never.
Okay, hit me.
Okay, going back to your slide that has the replans.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 6th graders in particular, there's 21 students. How many of those students are new to our district versus we graduated out of 5th grade? Do you know?
Unless they moved, I'd have to pull the names, but I actually would say none of them are new. And I'm doing that off my head because I don't want to pull up a list of names, but
Sure.
if they come to us from another Colorado district on a read plan, that read plan comes with them. That's pretty rare for us. I can think of 2 kids that have come in that we actually knew they came on a read plan. So I can confirm it for you when I look up names, but I really think they all are like certainly came to me from our 5th grade.
And I was curious, and Ruby, maybe you can talk to this too. Have we considered or thought about a full-time literacy interventionist at the middle school?
Ruby, you want me to touch on that real quick?
Like I hear the learning place, and I hear the teachers. Have we thought about a full-time, or I was just curious on that.
Ruby, do you want to? I'm sorry.
Go for it, Janet.
So historically, we've had a halftime interventionist. The first year that Sonia Greenway was an instructional coach and she came out of the language arts classroom, she was a halftime interventionist and a halftime instructional coach. It was really my decision at that next year to make her a full-time coach, and we felt like it was really necessary, and that she was able to support those teachers that were supporting the kids in the classroom, and to ensure those kids were getting what they needed in the classroom. So it was really my decision, almost like do we go keep the interventionist? Do we want a full-time coach? And I felt strongly that so much of what happens in the middle school, that intervention takes place from that core teacher in that classroom, and Sonia is supporting that happening. Ruby, do you want to chime in? You have more history than I even do.
Yeah, the question, Stacy, was if we considered a full-time literacy interventionist, and we really don't have the numbers to to do a full-time literacy interventionist at the middle school. The middle school only has about 240 students, and you see the numbers here on read plans, but you also might notice that almost all, or maybe all of those students also are students that have a disability, a learning disability, or they're emerging bilinguals. So they're learning 2 languages right now, and they're getting support and intervention in already literacy, with literacy goals already in their ELD intervention or their case manager for their IEP. So they're already getting a lot of intervention. And so then Janet's pulling her reading teachers, who are also trained teachers, to fill in the gaps there, with Mr. Seiler meeting with them as well.
And
And then
Stacy,
oh, go ahead.
and Ruby, stop me if I'm wrong, but I know of 2 kids that there was a pathway. I guess that was ELD, Ruby, that I'm thinking to come, if they're on an IEP and they have a learning disability. I'm getting mixed up with read plans, but
Mhm.
they can come off of an ELD plan on a pathway if they're IEP, but that doesn't relate to the read plan, does it, Ruby?
Not no, not the way the policy is written for the state of Colorado, but
Okay,
yeah.
my bad. I'm sorry. Stacy, you had something?
No, I was just, with, especially in particular with our ELD, us having a full-time ELD teacher there has to really help as well, instead of splitting them between the high school and middle school,
That and a paraprofessional, like, oh my goodness.
right?
And he's here today. Yeah, super excited about, because like my ELD teacher is doing a class with 8 kids. He can be pushing into a math class that's got 3 newcomers and helping them there. So we're between those 2 things, Stacy, we're super excited about the growth our kids are going to make.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So before you leave that, Janet, I'm just kind of curious with the 6th graders. They experienced a rather disruptive year with COVID, but I'm just kind of curious with those students. It doesn't help with ELD and IEP kids to experience what we've gone through recently with COVID and with the wildfires. But I was wondering, with those kids coming up from 5th grade, are we seeing, did they come in with, I assume they came in with IEPs and with ELD, and how long had they had those at the elementary? I'm kind of trying to look at a longitudinal thing here. Do you know on the history?
So it would depend on student by student, right? Did they go on an
Yeah.
IEP in 2nd grade or 4th grade? When did they arrive here from their home country that they
Right.
went on to ELD? So I couldn't give I definitely couldn't give a overall answer to that. That's definitely student by student as
Sure.
to how long they've been on an IEP or the ELD plan.
I was just wondering if if you're seeing a decrease overall from elementary to middle school in those categories, or is this kind of one of those bumps that just is a large group?
I feel like this group was a large bump that probably had nothing to do with COVID, but I think total we had 10 kids on IEP, and the class I'm getting next year, I think, has 6. Like it definitely swung. And the same with, it was interesting. It was like a class that all came with a plan, even gifted and talented ALPs. Like we have some classes with 1 or 2 kids on ALPs. This 6th grade class has 10. So they're an interesting, very eclectic.
Yeah.
eclectic group.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting how different classes have a definite character to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Janet. Is there anyone else that has questions?
I will stop sharing and probably turn it over to Mary, huh?
Yeah. Or I don't know, Mary, are you sitting in for Maren? On my schedule is Maren.
No, I'm not sitting in for Maren. I don't know where
I
Maren
don't,
is.
and I don't see Maren. I'm not sure if she's here.
I don't see her.
I don't see her either. Okay. Ruby, do you know what Maren, any idea what she was going to talk about as far as CTE and career-wise?
I do not, and I'm not sure Maren knew she was on the agenda, to be honest, Bev.
Oh, okay.
And talking to Sheldon before he left today, he never mentioned to me that she was going to be on the agenda. So I think that might have been an oversight. I
Okay.
think maybe nobody contacted her. So maybe move her to the next month.
It's getting a little crowded on the next couple months, but
Okay.
yep, we'll do it. So, okay, is there
Okay.
anything else that anyone wants to bring up? Okay, any questions anybody has? Okay, okay. Is there a motion that we then adjourn?
I think that maybe, Mary, you're here to present on the high school.
I was
UIP,
gonna-
weren't you?
I was going to talk about it, but I can tell you, I have a little presentation. I'm
Then
very,
go for it.
I'm very new, so mine's not quite as comprehensive as Janet's, of course, in terms of, I'm learning and really trying to grasp all of our UIP, but it's nice that Ruby's here because Ruby is a big player in the UIP, the most current UIP for the high school. So what I've outlined in mine, and I'll share my screen. I think I can, right, Ruby?
You can. I think that Bev, perhaps Sheldon contacted Mary instead of Maren, and maybe that was the confusion.
That could be, okay, and I didn't get
Yeah.
that. I asked him last week. I said, any changes on the agenda? And I didn't get that. I missed that message. Sorry. My apologies, everybody.
No problem. I will just go through mine and Ruby pipe in with whatever you'd like to say as well, because really, as I said a moment ago, being new to the high school and just getting acquainted and conversation and looking through and really studying the UIP and talking to Ruby, and I've just really outlined, what I've been involved in, what I have seen, some of the things that we're working on at the high school. I know that, again, it's certainly not all encompassing, but I wanted to talk about a few of the things as I've been here. So I'll kind of go through those, and I shouldn't take longer than the time that we have. But one of the things we talked about with Janet too is our PLC, our learning communities, and the fact that all of our teachers are members of PLCs that meet weekly. We have leaders of those PLCs that lead professional learning for that team. And also those leaders are members of our high school leadership team. We also meet bi-weekly in our leadership team. So we have wider discussions about the school and decision-making. Then there, of course, there's that district leadership team that those leaders are part of as well that we've discussed somewhat. Our principal PLC right now is working on even more professional learning in the area. So this is great for me as well with our PLC work, because it is super important, and that's what guides our work as as teams together. So we talked a lot about project-based learning already. And the addition of that to our high school, which I'm very, very excited about too, and think that it's a great addition, and really look forward to how we move forward with project-based learning. Ruby talked a lot about that, and it was, like I said, helps me to even grasp more. I've gotten to be a part of it. It's been really excellent. So I've been appreciative of that. We are in the middle of looking at curriculum adoption. I think some of you know that, with our math and science and math right now in the math PLC, we are doing a book study together. It's called Catalyzing Change in High School Mathematics, really about initiating critical conversations in math, and our teachers are working to align our curriculum a little bit more. There's a lot of work to be done in math. We know that. And then the science piece as well. I haven't been as involved, but plan on being in those meetings as well, where I know there's a crosswalk with a lot of different curriculum that's being talked about. There are meetings happening, and that's something that I'm, again, really looking forward to being more a part of in terms of our curriculum adoption in our school. Let's see. Why can't I go to my next screen? That's weird. I'm stuck here. Oh, here we go. Okay. In terms of wider community, like global outcomes, CTE programming. I know Maren would be able to talk more about CTE for sure. So it'll be nice when she gets on to talk about that. But I know that one of the things that staff are continually working on is how we are assessing our global outcome performance measures in our courses, and how that can look in all of our courses, and how we do that together, those performance measures, to know that we're doing the right work and getting kids where they need to be, and understanding those 21st century skills for sure, and our global outcomes. Our focus also is on gaining new partnerships, whether it's community, industry, college, and university level. Those are super important to us as well, with CTE, with just our dual enrollment, our industry, just the offerings. My next thing is offerings for students. That's something that I'm super interested in, and I know that a lot of us are. What else can we be offering our students through our CTE courses and offerings overall and in the future, and expanding our CTE building and the use of that. I love that CTE building. I think it is going to be just continue to be a really great addition to our high school. And then developing a community-wide resource team. I think, Ruby, could you talk a little bit more about that one? Because I know that that's something that I've heard quite a bit about, but just, those student-employer relationships for training and mentorship.
Yeah, we've expanded that every year, actually. Marin leads that. She is our contact for employers who want to partner with the district to employ students and do a work-based or an internship. What we are trying to expand with that is we have pretty well only been confined to work-based learning, where students are going to their employer, they're employed through that employer, and they're getting credit at the high school through a reflection and an employer evaluation kind of process. But we want to expand also to provide internship experiences, and then job shadow experiences as well, and some more experiences where students might not have the time to do a work study, or they might not be employed anywhere, but they can go and partner with different community members, different employers throughout our community, and they can job shadow, or they can do some other experiences that wouldn't require them to be employees. So we're trying to expand that and just build the number of employers that want to partner with us and work with our students. And so I think, if I remember right, she had said she brought on 5 new last year.
Yes.
And then
right.
She had a goal for 2, and I think exceeded it. And then I think every year, one of the exciting things under this end is we are going to be employing more high school students. The school district is going to be an employer for more high school students. I met with high school students last week about it. We're taking 7 of them down to UNC to attend the education career fair in 2 weeks, a week. And so these are future teachers of ours. These are high school students that aspire to be teachers. And so we're also going to have employment opportunities for them in the summer to be camp paraprofessionals. So they're going to teach literacy with our teachers. They're actually going to be trained in how to teach literacy intervention for the summer program, which will be really cool, because many of them are interested in being elementary teachers. And then also we're exploring the idea of employing high school students throughout the school year for just a few free periods to be paraprofessionals in classrooms to help students with literacy and math. So just a few things that the school district is doing to become a partner with our high school students.
Thank you, Ruby. Yeah, I knew you could speak more to that, as your involvement with it has been pretty large over here, and just a great addition. I know one of our students just started some work with Dr. Fish in town, and the veterinarian. So it's just some really neat things going on that are very valuable for our kids. So thanks for talking about that a little bit more, Ruby. I think I missed one. Yeah, cultural, or actually advisory and work study. Ruby talked a little bit about that, but this is more just visionary and wanting to look at these 2 areas of the school a lot more. Advisory time that we have right now at the end of the day, we're really working to make that the most efficient and effective time we can to help students with grades and with, staying up with any work and curriculum that they're needing more assistance with. But it also should be a culture building time, and we're just really wanting to make some changes for that next year. So I just talked a little bit about future planning, how it's going to be a building culture, but that emphasis is always on academic achievement as well. But how do we blend those a little bit better How do we blend some more service learning and giving back to our community through our advisories, our class advisories, and we'd like to make it earlier in the day. We feel like that's it's going to be an important part of next year and as we plan for that. And then I'm going to have some summer PD where we invite staff members to be part of how we continue to develop that and have some models that we look at together so that we can have a really, just improved and more efficient way that we use advisory time. And then we talked already a little bit about work study, just some greater intentionality around the work study experiences for students during the day. Like Ruby talked about, a lot of our kids have jobs, but how do we become a little more intentional about, the use of work study for our kids and maybe make it a little more tied to career or college interests and things like that. And the tiered approach, which includes internships like Ruby talked about. I do know that is something that we have talked a lot about, and I fully agree with. More interning, really great opportunities for kids in our town, I feel like, especially too. And then again, more summer PD exploration and development around that as well. I'm already talking to staff about as many that want to. I'm talking like a 2-day time period at the beginning of the summer that we get together and really just bring that together as a staff and put some more emphasis on it. So we're looking forward to that. Let's see, my thing just gets stuck. It's so weird. There we go. Okay. And then cultural responsive. This is similar to what Janet talked about too. We do our ELD plans. We have our full-time ELD teacher, which we're very thankful for as well, having somebody that is fully devoted to that work. Our cultural liaison is here working hard in our building as well, which has been a wonderful addition. I know, just brings a lot to our culture and to our students and in that programming, our support for our newcomers. This semester, we added an academic reading and writing class and a business and life skills class for English learners as well, just to provide even more support in those areas. The focus is still closing our gap between Hispanic and white students, has been a part of our school improvement plan. And that will continue to be a focus for us. And then our grading commitments, we're having continued discussion and development with staff and community. We really, part of the PD day in March, we're looking forward to having, we're diving into that even more deeply with our grading commitments together so that we can make that a stronger piece and bring it to our community even more. So that's just something that we're planning to do here soon in March. And then social and emotional learning, also, shoot, if I can get to it. Oops, sorry. my thing's a little sensitive. So social emotional learning, restorative practices, also a large emphasis for us and will continue to be. We believe strongly that relationships are foundational to our everyday work here, our culture, and we're looking at, we have an attendance committee that we're tracking our data every week. And, we have a very restorative attendance policy as well, where we're engaging students when they are, there's absences happening a lot, where our PLCs are bringing kids in as much as possible. We're really focusing on making sure kids know we care about them not being here when they aren't. If attendance doesn't start to improve after we've had these conversations, we bring families in to have restorative meetings, really to decide how can we all come together to help this situation here and what is going on, because there's a reason behind attendance and the difficulties that some students are having with attendance. So really wanting to get to the bottom of that and partnering with families. We have our low grades list that we see that comes out weekly that we really track and make sure we know who to be emphasizing during advisory time and who we're talking to more and supporting more. Our discipline and conflict we handle with restorative practices continuum as well. We believe strongly in that. Again, at the high school age, these are really strong life lessons for students to be able to use restorative practices when something goes wrong. And so we believe in that strongly. Our MTSS, multi-tier system of supports at grade level teams meet weekly, 9th grade, and then the next week is 10th, and then we meet 11th and 12th. So every third week we come together, which are teachers, our instructional coach, counselors, admin, other teachers as needed. Again, I put by, it's really tri-weekly to discuss and brainstorm ways to meet student needs in those meetings, and those happen regularly. Again, to really pinpoint which students are in need of more support in any way. We have a social emotional learning specialist that visits our high school on Tuesday afternoons that we can refer students to, and has made an impact on our students that feel like they have just somebody else to visit with outside of our counselors and our district social worker. We're starting our coffee cart, our cat chat back up again, which is really just students that are serving coffee, there for just for an ear for our students, another peer support. So we're really looking forward to having that starting back up. We're also, the district's hiring a new mental health clinician to also be another tier of that social emotional support. So that's out there right now, posted, and we look forward to seeing who we can bring on to support us in those areas even further. So those are just some of the big buckets. One of the things I didn't talk about was we've talked a lot about our graduation requirements, and our high schools worked hard on that for the last few months to make sure that all of our students, all 100% of our students, have the opportunity to meet the requirements for receiving a diploma through the high school. So, we have, like Ruby talked about earlier, we have 4 years of core classes in our area, all 4 years that we expect that. There's 28 credits total. But on top of that, some of those graduation requirements that are the way they're typically met are through, ACT or SAT scores is one of the most common ways that students also meet that extra graduation requirement. Some take AP classes, concurrent enrollment with college classes are going strongly. And some of the opportunities for the students that still need to meet that is our personalized learning class, which is developing a capstone for students that haven't met those requirements in other ways. We just hosted the ASVAB where 20 out of 25 of our students passed that. It was great and got some great information on other things that they may be strong at, some of their strengths that they got to read about and hear about after they took it. We're providing the AccuPlacer coming up a week from Friday for another chance to kind of take a standardized test to give kids an opportunity to pass. And then we have curriculum during advisory also for students that aren't able to take the class because of a full schedule. So those are some major areas that we've been working on at the high school since I've been around. And I look forward to learning and digging more into our school improvement plan as well. And we'll be able to give a more comprehensive update on that a little later. So any questions?
Mary, I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stacy. Hey, when the board took their building tours, I was talking with Sheldon a little bit about the CT programming. And I know in the past we've had a dedicated CT director, and then that seemed to switch to Sheldon. Are we looking at maybe switching that as we add more classes and opportunities? That the building, like having the opportunity to go in and look at that building, expanding that programming, I think is wonderful. It's fabulous. There's so much we can do in there. And I was just curious if we're looking at maybe switching that director position, if you will. And I'm not certain what the appropriate name moving forward, just so we can ramp up that programming for students. Because it kind of relates to our project-based learning in some ways, I see it.
Yeah, I would say yes to that, Stacy. I think that is something that I've been, talked at some level about, as well as having somebody oversee that as a type of director. Yes. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because it is, needs to be a robust program with somebody overseeing that really, strongly. And so, yeah, that's my understanding. I don't know, Ruby, if you have a different understanding, but I've felt like I've had conversations with Sheldon about that as well. And as we continue to expand, making sure that we have really strong oversight.
You probably know more than me about developments in that area, Mary, since you're the principal. So
yeah, I thought that I probably did. Yeah, I thought that that's kind of our latest, is that is our goal, is to definitely do that. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the advantages of that too is that with some of the partnerships that have gone on between our CTE program and the CTE programs in some of the other districts, having a director or someone that's, that is the one that kind of coordinates some of that part too would be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I would be thankful for that for sure. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Neat area for expansion and that
Awesome.
building is awesome. So thank you. That's a neat one.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mary? Okay.
Just one more thing, Bev. For the grading commitments, and I briefly, just a pulse on the community. I know when we all, in April, when we did the whole grading for equity, I know there's still a lot of concerns in the community about that switch. And some of that could be the lack of understanding of how it really was implemented or what's being done on a day-to-day basis. So I think I really appreciate seeing the March 7th PD on the grading commitments and re-engaging in that conversation.
Yep. Yep. Thank you for saying that, Stacy, because yeah, I do agree that just, being new in the building as well, wanting to understand that fully myself and having deeper conversations with staff and the day-to-day work that we're trying to accomplish. You're right. And we then need to bring that to our community after that. And so that is a big reason that I've decided to put that into that PD day, because we do need to come together as a staff again and review that and really talk through that and be able to, like you said, if there are misunderstandings or ways that we can, be more effective, whatever it is that we come out of that day with is what we'll plan to bring to our community as well.
Great.
And that is, Stacy, that is on the agenda for April for DAAC.
Good.
Sorry, Bev, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So just a FYI on that. So, because I know that there were several things that were going on with that and the timing would be such that that would be helpful to have it then. Anyway, that is on our agenda for April.
That's
Yeah. Good. Okay.
All
Good
right.
point. Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Mary. We're getting there.
Yeah, thank you for letting me talk a little bit.
Well, thank you for doing that, because then I can move things around on the agenda. See if we can get a little more coordinated on these last couple meetings here. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to ask or make comment on? Okay, so I'm going to ask again. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
You want to leave? All right. Is there a second?
I'll second, Bev.
Thanks, Stacy. All right. All in favor, would you please give me a thumbs up if you're in favor of adjourning at this point? Okay, well, I think I see everybody. Yep, we're good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And I apologize for some of the mix-ups on this one. We'll get it straightened out. And I promise I will remember that it is the first Monday of the month, not the second. And we'll get that. So get some of these things. But thank you, Mary, for doing that, for kind of, because that kind of moves you up from where you were before. So we can do some shuffling around. Well, thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all, to everyone, to all of you that are attending, to our presenters, everybody. Thank you so much. So appreciate that. Well, enjoy, and all of you have a happy Valentine's Day coming up. So enjoy that and enjoy this weather. My gosh, it's pretty. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.